preaching in the choir tonight. But anyway, this presentation, we originally did a good portion of this here back in 2014 for the Bay County Genealogical Society. And it's aimed at an audience who has really no knowledge of who organized St. Paul, when it was organized, and why it was even organized. And we've also shown it to several of the service clubs around Bay City, and we're going to make this available to our two, and I hope maybe even in our own church that we can use it for maybe like for confirmation class and also for maybe orientation of new members. One of the differences between St. Paul and Frankenlust and the other Franken congregations is that we didn't really have a business or commercial community associated with it, like the other ones did. We were fairly close to Salisbury, eventually to be Salisbury, and probably maybe that's one of the reasons why. But we did have brickyard, we have coal mines in the area. Actually, there's one coal mine, the last coal mine that closed down was just less than a mile north of the church. There was one in the back of the church. There was also a brickyard. There was a coal mine over by the Bay Valley area over there. So those are places where people worked after more settlers came over and after the land was cleared. But originally it was basically agricultural. Of course, we also had a sugar processing plant, the German American Sugar Company. That was not too far away from us there too. Of course, other things in common, I'm going to run over some of those quickly, of why the people came over, and we're going to pass over that fairly quickly tonight because most of that's been covered already. We'll keep a few dates in mind. 1848 was when St. Paul Frankenlust was established. 1837, Lower Saginaw, and everything north of Saginaw was at that time Lower Saginaw. In 1837, Lower Saginaw, which ended up to be Bay City, was first settled a little bit. 1855, Frankenlust Township was formed from Coxville Township in Saginaw County. And it's a little bit smaller than most townships. It's 22 square miles rather than 36. The villages of Salisbury and Winona and Banks, which were all on the west side of Bay City, they incorporated into West Bay City. And in about 1871 and then in 1905, West Bay City and East Bay City formed together as one town. The southwest part of Bay County and Bay City has a high concentration of Lutheran churches. I live out near Delta College, and within a 6-mile radius of my house, there are 6 Lutheran churches, three of which are daughter congregations of St. Paul Frankenlust. So that's sort of a little bit of an introduction, and now we'll try to get started here. St. Paul Frankenlust was the first Lutheran church and the second church to be established in Bay County. And for those of you who don't know, St. Paul is located on M84 just off I-75 at exit 160. If you're traveling north on I-75, you can see the steeple off to your right as you're approaching the exit. Actually, the first church to be established, here's our church right here. It's not the Leaning Tower of St. Paul. That picture you can see is straight. It's not curved as you see it up there. But actually, the first church in Bay County was a little Indian mission church out on Euclid Street, Euclid Avenue, as you're going out towards State Park. And that's the old building there that has not been used since 1947, I guess, and that was established by the Methodists over there. And of course, this is the order, and this is, like I say, an orientation for those people who are not German background. Frankenmuth means the courage, and Frankentrost means the consolation, and Frankenlust is the joy of the Franconians, and Frankenhelp is the help of the Franconians. And why they came over, we all know that. Pretty much religious freedom, and a lot of political unrest back there at that time, and that's what the main reason. And I personally think it's a fact. One of the facts is that they had an opportunity to own land over here, and that was quite a rarity over there in Germany. It was really a long shot for people to be a landowner over there, and the opportunity of being a landowner, I think, was a pretty advance themselves too much. The settlers actually came to over here in that time period, between 1845 and 1855, 930,000 men and women immigrated from Germany during that time period for me. And that's a lot of people. And this is our founder here, Pastor Severs. He served as the congregation's first pastor, and he served for 45 years. Now, the organizer over in Germany who sent the people over here and organized the trips over here was Reverend Lay, John Conrad William Lay. And he wanted to be sure that the immigrants had a spiritual leadership and support. Even though he was a small pastor in the town of Neu-Dennislau, he was very missionary-minded. He was responsible for sending pastors not only to North America, but also Australia, New Guinea, Brazil, and the Ukraine. He was also famous for his liturgical and theological studies. The journey over here, they started out, this is a modern-day Neu-Dennislau, but that's where most of them came from. About 20 miles southwest of Nuremberg and 12 miles east of Ansbach, which, by the way, is the sister city of that city. The settlers gathered in Nuremberg in April of 1848 by foot and also by train. They went to Bremen, arriving there about April 15th, and 3 days later they left on the sailing ship Regina, and after a stormy 45-day journey, they arrived in New York on June the 3rd. Then by way of Albany to Buffalo to Detroit and made their way to Michigan. Previously, Reverend Severs, who already was in Michigan, had bought 600 acres of land 11 miles north of Saginaw. Just for a little, if I can find the pointer here. This is the Saginaw River. We're looking north. This is the Saginaw River. There are two branches of the Squaquonnie Creek that empty into the river. We're going west now, and we're curving around the corner, and right about in here is where the church is located. One branch goes around the back of the school now. The other branch keeps going south, goes under I-75 roughly about here, then crosses M84 between Burger's Restaurant and McDonald's, and then ends up to going through Bay Valley and out into Delta College area. So this is the area right in here we'll be talking about right here. Now the settlers, this is all known as Lower Saginaw. Part of the settler group at Bridgeport, part of them went by boat and actually brought provisions and stuff up the Saginaw River and into the creek area and had a scow. The other group went through an Indian trail through Saginaw, and of course M84 being the curved road is still an Indian, I mean that's because why it's curved, because it was an Indian trail. And they came on July 4th, and it said in the history books that they could hear the cannons in Saginaw celebrating the 4th of July. The people here got kind of hung up here with some rice and other vegetation in the creek here, and they stopped and spent the night over here at Mr. Stone's place, who had a house along the Saginaw River here, a little way south where Stone Island Road meets the river. The people that, when they came over and they camped the first night under the stars in the cemetery, maybe roughly this area, or maybe a little bit, we're looking northeast right here, a little bit. They spent their first night. The next day on the 5th, they went over to where the people with the boat had landed over there, and then they all had a meal over there at Mr. Stone's place, and they came over here, and this is where they all got together. Let's see here. This is taken a couple years ago. This is covered with Franken at that time there, a couple years ago. Now it's a lot more water there. We're looking sort of northeast now. This is the way they would have came up over by boat. Would have came up. I'm standing on the Ziegler Road bridge. The Ziegler Road separates the cemetery from the church here. We're looking, say, northeast. This is the back end of Lutheran Child and Family Services right here, and the river curves around and goes east there. This is the founder stone right here. It's located in the northeast corner of the cemetery, and here are the original founders, along with Reverend Severs. Here we have J. Hochtel, J. Koch and wife, Andreas Getz and wife, J. Helmreich and wife, Hakel, Paul Knaer and wife, Catherine Ziegler, and Eva Barbara Enzer, which happens to be my maternal great-grandmother. Now the Englishized version, whoa, wrong way here. The Englishized version of these names would be Hochtel was Hatchel. And a number of years ago, we had a mayor, Ann Hatchel, and her husband, Bob, I think was a grandson or great-grandson of this gentleman right here. Of course, now we see, some people say, Pook, so Pook is Koshton, Helmreich is Helmreich, of course, and Knaer is, some say Nor, and so forth. So some of these have sort of been Englishized over the years. This is a replica that Gerald here made of the first log cabin church of the church that we had. He made this for our 150th anniversary in 1998. Of course, the church is always an integral part of the settlers' lives there. And this little church here was 24 by 28 feet. Life was difficult at that time, of course. The summers were hot, and the winters were cold, and the work of clearing the land was very hard. And let's not forget the mosquitoes. There was no mosquito control at that time, and we were quite a bit of low land around the area, so the population of mosquitoes was pretty high. Typhoid fever and various other diseases took their toll, and it was not unusual for that time. There were a high number of infant deaths, and there's a part of the cemetery that's devoted, it was devoted at least back then, for infant graves there. This is the first parsonage, which was actually built by Severs himself with financial help from his future father-in-law, Friedrich Koch, K-O-C-H. Koch was a wealthy industrialist in Germany, having interest in mining and manufacturing. Severs went back to New York in 1850 and was married in New York City. This is quite a pretentious home, really, for that time for that era. And most other fellows lived in log cabins and so forth, and some of the locals would refer to this as the Weiße Schloss, or the White Castle. Each year, more and more immigrants arrived, and by 1853, the settlement had about 60 families. In December of that year, Severs wrote back to Lee that the congregation had 50 voting members and the salary was $250. The pastors also received sausages and meat when the farmers did their butchering. In his letter to Lee, he stated they were gathering funds for a larger church since the log cabin was too small. Then in October 4th of 1857, a new frame church was built. This was at the corner of Ziegler and West Side Saginaw Road. This church measured 30 by 70 feet. It was initially built without a steeple, which was added later on. And this church served the congregation for 48 years. Now, this square right here is where the frame church was, and these markers along here where there were sheds and barns for the horses while the people were attending the church service. This is Ziegler Road right here. We're going to have a new picture of this taken. We've got a fellow coming with a drone and take some new pictures of this. This is, of course, the church, and this is the present-day parsonage over here. This is the mode of transportation back at that time, especially, of course, in the wintertime with a sleigh. In the summertime, it would have been a buggy. And where the sleigh is standing is approximately where the present church is located. That's the old frame church in the background back over there. This is Pastor Severs' gravestone. He died in September 9th of 1893 at the age of 77, which is actually pretty old for that time, that era. He died of influenza. And this, get a little close up here. This black line right here is where the cemetery was vandalized here a number of years ago, and it was glued back together. Ferdinand Christian Ernest George Sievers, and 1848 to 1893. And this is the in English, in German here, Selig sind die Toten, die in den Ehren sterben. Von nun an, ja, das Geist spricht, dass sie ruhen in der, I'm looking at it, Ehren, Arbeit, what it means in English here is that blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. From now on they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them. I can really read it, but it's kind of a bad angle. My excuse. Four pastors served St. Paul during the first 100 years. Reverend Sievers, followed by Jacob Trinkline, Peter Andrus, and then J. George Nichterlein, of course, who was born and raised in Frankenmuth here. And the early pastors are honored by having their names on road markers and around the cemetery and the church property there. On Sunday, July 3rd and July 4th of 1898, the congregation celebrated its 50th anniversary. Services were held in the Congregation Park, next to the present Shell gas station and the subway up there. Four of the original members, the original settlers, were still present, still alive in 1898. This is the section of the cemetery where some of the former pastors are buried in this area. This is a Nichter line right here. Some of these are not part of the backup. So, during World War I, 17 members of the congregation served in the armed forces. One, Otto Begek, which happened to be my uncle, died in France in 1918, a few months before the armistice was signed. Otto died from influenza, which was rampant worldwide. It was estimated that between 1918 and 1919, 50 to 100 million people worldwide died of influenza, and 675,000 of those were in the United States. And you know, you're taking your flu shots, we're still fighting with influenza nowadays, but those days it really was an epidemic that went, and especially like in the military camps with people being close quartered, it was that much more difficult. This is the construction of the church in, let's see, yeah, okay. This is the construction of the church right here, of the present church, which was started in 1904, and then it was, this is the cornerstone laying. For people, members of St. Paul, this is we're looking sort of northeast. Oops. Looking northeast is the front of the church is here, is the chancellery at the front here. And here's the construction in progress right here that took place throughout 1905. And then and this shows the completion of the church at that time. And we do show that the horse barns are gone, but there's some stanchions here, so I don't know if it's global warming or the horses got stronger or better, but they didn't have It was decided to build the new church because they felt that the repairs of the old church were too expensive. The repairs of the old frame church, they estimated about $8,000, so they decided to go ahead and build this church here. The architect was a Pratt and Kepi, And they're pretty well-known architects in the Bay City area because they also designed the Bay City Hall, the Masonic Temple at the Center in Adams, Center of Madison actually, the Crapo Building, which is the center of Washington, and the St. Stanislaus Church in the south end of the church with the twin spires down there. Like I say, the cornerstone was laid in April of 1905, and it was dedicated in December of 1905. Cost of the church at that time was a whopping $21,857.41, and was paid for 3 months later in March of 1906, and they had $40.22 left in the building fund. So, good record keeping and good frugality there. This is a picture of the interior of the church. Keep in mind a few things here, and I'm getting out of whack here a little bit, but later on we're going to show you when the church was remodeled in 1976 there. But this area, this is over the pulpit right here. This is called a sound. In English, it's a sounding board. In English, it's a sounding board, but in German, it's called something else. That was on display at the museum here, but when the museum was remodeled here some years ago, it's still in the possession, it's still archived someplace here. But and this is the pulpit. The pulpit was attached right to the rear door here. That was later on separated out. I think the baptismal font came from the frame church, and a few other things also from the frame church were brought over here. I couldn't figure why they call it a sounding board. To me, it was always just sort of an ornamental canopy. But then you have to remember, back in those days, there was no sound system. The pastor's voice had to carry throughout the church. You had real high ceilings, so I guess this helped project it forward. So I can kind of remember that sometimes pastors were sort of graded by their projection, the console tone or the voice that they projected out. The ones that had a very stronger voice seemed to be the most popular. But and then of course later on the pulpit was lowered down and all. Christian education has always been, high priority for us over at St. Paul. And this is a picture of one of the earlier schools right there. Let's see, I gotta find myself here. Yeah. This is the white frame school. This was built in 1865. It was replaced in 1900 with this cement block school right here. This school here had actually housed public school and the parochial school in the same building, which is rather unusual. And then later on, I think they built to the right. They built a public school. This is the cement block school. In 41, there was a fire here. It caused considerable damage to the school and a new school building with 3 classrooms, an auditorium, and a kitchen was built. And 2 more classrooms were added in 1958, and in 1968, a large, gymnasium is back here. It's a nice gymnasium, probably equal in size and to a class C or D high school, or even a B high school. So it's really a nice. One of the nicer gymnasiums around in the area there. Okay, in 1948, of course, now we're at our 100th anniversary, and a reenactment of the settlers landing on the banks of Squaw Creek took place. Numerous church services and a picnic at the church grounds were all part of the celebration. Here are some of the settlers right here. For my relatives here, this is George and Minnie Schmidt right here. Martin Uphold and Teeny Uphold here. Jacob and Alvina Uphold back here. There are some Wagner's right in here. This is Floyd dressed up like a girl. And the rest of them, I think, are either Bauer or Simon. This is a gathering before the parade up to the church ground, the picnic ground. Of course, we had a congregational church band at that time too. I think I was about the 7th grade or so at this particular time, and this was really a big event. Bigly, I know what the trumpet said. This is the parade, the buggies. This is my Uncle Adolf with the black hat here on the left side, leading the parade. They're going from the church proper to, this is M47. At that time it was not M84. This is M47 right there. Okay, we move on now to 1976. And then we did the remodeling of the interior and addition of the front of the church here. This part right here is an addition, because remember, before that, the steps came right straight out, and it was a very small little area there for greeting and meeting people after church. And the doors, which were right in the front, opened right to the northwest, and the wind was blowing, and now we have, actually, instead of calling it left and right, we say this side here, that's the expressway side, and that's the cemetery side over there, and everybody knows, doesn't get confused. It was built by Engelhardt Construction Company, and the interior was under the direction of the Potente Company out of Wisconsin. This is the interior right there. One of the things that they did was they separated the altar from the rear door. It used to be attached. They elevated the rear door. They covered up a round stained glass window that was here still there, but it's visible from the outside. They didn't want anything to interfere with this particular area of the crucifix Christ on the cross and so forth. And there's a history behind that too, which we'll get into. This is a close-up of the crucifixion there. Like I say, there's quite a history behind that. Back in 1866, 9 years after the frame church was built, Pastor Sievers wrote to Reverend Lay for assistance of painting a suitable oil painting for the altar. He couldn't decide whether he wanted the Ascension, he wanted alongside the resurrection, or he wanted to have the crucifixion. So he corresponded back and forth with Lay, and Lay commissioned a artist out of Munich to paint this picture. So this picture is this painting is 152 years old, and it still looks to be in pretty good shape. All of the church windows, of course, are stained glass, and they were installed when the church was built back in 1905. And the total cost of all of the stained glass windows was $800. I think we spent $75,000 in repairing and cleaning and relighting and all that other kind of good stuff that goes on there. This is the transit. Now, early morning, September 2nd, 1984, a fire almost destroyed the sanctuary. Lightning struck the steeples and started to burn, and timbers from the burning steeple fell onto the roof. Firefighting units from Bay City and other surrounding townships came to assist, and I think it's the high ladder truck from Bay City that probably saved the church right there. The steeple burned right down to the bell tower area. And I say the fact that the roof, there's the cross laying on the roof right here, the old cross. The fact that the roof here was slate probably prevented the entire sanctuary from going up in flames. But it came with enough. Now, very early that Sunday morning, this is a picture of things of debris laying on the ground. You can see the cross. This is the cemetery. Excuse me, this is the expressway side we're looking at right here. Early that morning, the parishioners gathered together, and we took the hymn books across the road to the school and hauled out the altar and the piano we used, for devotional services in the school, and services went on as scheduled. Did not miss the church service, and of course we had to have church services over there for quite a while till the remodeling took place, and we'll go through that. Not the remodeling, but the restoration took place there. In addition to the steeple, the organ, which was below the steeple, bell tower, suffered quite a bit of damage, a lot of damage. The front entrance was quite a bit of damage. And most of that was, of course, due to water damage. Well, what are we going to do about the steeple? Well, they decided to build a new steeple on the ground. This is out of plywood, of course, now, not the 2 by 20 or 18-inch timbers that comprise the old steeple. They built the steeple on the ground, and then we got to hoisting the steeple up. This is a very cold day now in January of 2006. Yeah, 2006. Now they're lowering it down here, and now they're attaching the steeple to the bell tower here. And they also built a copper cupola and aluminum cross on the ground, and then that was hoisted up there, Mr. Hott, and rode up there. I think that's illegal nowadays. I don't think we can do that. And that there he is going up. That we can enlarge this a little bit, but he's getting up in the world there a little bit. And now it's all complete right there, so it's back the way it was. And of course, this is taken just a few years ago, and the copper here has weathered to the verdigris color and back in shape again. Then in 1998, we now are celebrating our 150th anniversary, and state historical marker was put up on the cemetery side, and you can probably read it better. I've got a bad angle here, but it talks about the architect's design in Neo-Gothic church. Talking about the church when it was built, but it's her third house of worship, with the log cabin and the frame church prior to this. Get to the pointer part right here. There's that 21,000 dedicated September 8, 1905, and the church is in a cruciform in the form of a cross. The altar, pulpit, and baptismal font. That's where I found that. Couldn't remember. The altar, pulpit, and baptismal font came from the previous church, and so it talks about the lightning striking the church and destroying the church, destroying the steeple, and so forth, and prayers were made, and so forth, and it talks about the cemetery across Ziegler Road there. This is the other side of the sign right here. It talks about Frankenlust, the township a little bit, and it says one of the four. Whoa! The butts are too close together. One of the four colonies in Michigan settled by people from Franconia, Germany, of course all from the state of Bavaria. Peter Sievers, 14 immigrants, established St. Paul. Actually, June of 1848, in June they had a meeting in Saginaw prior to coming to the woods and I guess signed the papers and so forth, and July 4th they arrived in the house at St. Paul Cemetery. The Frankonians built houses along the south side of Squamish Creek, cleared the land for farming. They built a log church, which we showed earlier here, in 1849, replaced it with a frame church in 1857. Originally part of Cottrell Township, Saginaw County, became a Frankenlust Township, Bay County, in 1881, I guess. They named the colony after their combining the name of their homeland, Franconia, with the German word meaning joy. And of course, we had several during that time period. We had several special services during 1998. There, some of the services were conducted by we call pastors who were sons of the congregation, who had grown up in St. Paul and went on to be pastors around the countryside and came back on different various Sundays throughout that particular year to conduct services there. One of the later things we've done is, of course, is like many other churches that we've added screens for help with the worship. Of course, now you can see that after the remodeling, which didn't show on some of the other pictures, that the high pulpit is gone, and the lower pulpit here, and say we separated the altar from the rear door. That's gone there. This is just an example of what can be the order of service, of course, and songs and so forth that are shown on the screen, and the announcements prior to service there. I think we have time for a few interesting things, past customs that really maybe are not very strange to you people being members of Franken congregation, but for those outsiders who aren't familiar, they would seem rather unusual. But first of all, prior to 1928, services were completely in German except for special occasions. In 1928, Pastor Dixterline began monthly English services, and beginning in 1940, a weekly 11 a.m. English service was added and followed the traditional 9:30 a.m. German service. Gradually through the years, the services transitioned from German to English. In 1979, German services were completely discontinued. Services are now held at 8 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. Prior to the start of the English services, the seating arena was that the men sat on the left side of the center aisle, and the women sat on the right side of the center aisle, and the school-age children sat in the front pews. And through the years, the church bell, in addition to being rung, of course, prior to services, also provided a means of communication. Prior to the building of I-75, the sound of bells carried for several miles. On Sunday mornings, the bells are rung for 5 minutes, 1 hour, and again 1/2 hour prior to the start of the service. I guess this is a means of saying, get that last cow milk to hook up the bucket. Get ready to go to church. And then also, up until not too many years ago, the bells are rung following the death of a church member. At 9 a.m., on the day following the passing of a member, the bells would ring, and then the age of the member who passed away, the age was told. So you had 85 years old, you had 85 people who died. Quite a number of years ago, then Dr. Caroline was installed with speakers in the bell tower, and for short periods of time, inspirational songs were played during the afternoon and in the evening hours. On December 21st, 2015, Pastor Paul Tice, the 9th pastor of St. Paul, died very unexpectedly. He was 65 years old and had served the congregation since January of 1987. Very active person. He was a chaplain with the state police. In fact, many times he rode with the patrol cars at night with the state police. He was especially helpful and domestic problems, disputes, when there were children involved and so forth, and staple, and at his funeral there was a very large contingent of state policemen there. Then in early 2016, we engaged a couple of intentional interim pastors, Pastor Ted Gold and Pastor David Hakes, which some of you are familiar with. They were with us until the summer of 2017, and when we installed our present pastor, Reverend Dennis Matthias. This is some statistics right here. We have 981 baptized, 761 communicant, and the average weekly attendance is about 320, and it is growing. And it's a very good sign. This is our mission statement here. We believe we have been saved by Jesus and sent to serve. In conclusion, I would like to say that our congregation has tried to keep the best of the old, but also realizes that transition and change are necessary to survive and grow. We are proud of our buildings and historic cemetery, but a church is more than bricks and mortar. In 1848, our forefathers had an immense amount of faith in God, courage, and determination to leave their homeland and travel thousands of miles to begin a new life in the United States. It is our hope and prayer that these attributes, courage, determination, and most of all, faith, are still with us today. Okay, questions, and I don't hear very well, so you have to very loud. Does anybody have any? We have, oh, by the way, I failed to mention, we had Elmer Wagner wrote a very extensive book for the, something remarkable, one of the books up there. He wrote a very extensive book for our 150th anniversary here. We have some books along for sale if you want one. They're $10, which is a good reduced price, a special Frankonian price here. Tonight here, and it's a very complete, and a lot of the information that we received out of this presentation was taken from that particular book. He spent an immense amount of time. So, what Elmer's family, because I'm sitting right back there, his brother and sister, would you stand up, please? Ray, Florence, he and the committee, and his committee, put an awful lot of time, and it's a very, very detailed book. I can't imagine how many hours that he put in this thing right here. And again, I want to thank Jake Apple here, Gerald Apple. He has, a lot of people don't know in our church, but he has put an immense amount of time into church history and translating Wilbur's minutes from German into English and so forth. Yes, sir.
Which other congregations did Pastor Severs help?
St. John's Ambulance and Trinity Monitor in Zion in Main City. Those are the three daughter congregations. But he also traveled into Saginaw. One of the things that said that before he even got married, I guess his father-in-law or future father-in-law gave him $40 to buy a horse so he could make those rounds. And he ministered to people on Sunday afternoons at their homes. Out in the woods, and of course, woods at that time, but that was an immense amount of help. Like I say, the church and the township, were a lot of the church officers were also township supervisors. My great grandfather, J. Conrad, my name of our grandfather married J. Conrad Schmidt. He came over early in 1849, and their house had the post office, Frankenlust post office, and he was township clerk for quite a while. So a lot of that kind of ran in along with the public school districts. There were 3 public school districts out in the area. We had one public school was right on our property. One was down the bend, as you were making the bend to go into Bay City, that was called the Sugar School. And then one in the area called Brooks, which is sort of a hotchkiss down there, that was called the Brooks School, and we had the Sugar School, and I guess the Frankenlust School was the third one. They all combined now into a different Mackenzie School, which is built on Salzburg and 2 Mile, and of course later consolidated the Bay City School District. Okay, thank you all for coming. I guess we got some cookies and things back there.